Hi, welcome back. I've got a knife review for you guys. We haven't done a knife review for absolutely ages, and the guys at Who asked me if I'd be interested in reviewing their newest knife. I've reviewed a couple of theirs before, so you know I'm already a fan of the brand. They're UK based, so obviously I'm going to always support UK based guys, and they make UK legal carry stuff, so it's really relevant to us. And in these times we need to be really careful about what we're carrying, because as we've seen, you know, the police are pretty hot on people carrying around bladed objects that don't fit the criteria of a UK legal carry, which is basically sub 3-inch blade, and it's non-locking, so anything that locks out is going to be a problem. And that includes things like utility knives, that includes things like multi-tools. You know, I've heard people say, I always carry a multi-tool in the car. You know, I don't think that's a problem, because it's also got other useful gadgets on it. It is a problem if the blade locks out. You know, there won't be any sort of dispensation for you in law for that. Unfortunately, it seems like the people like you and me that probably carry these sorts of things around as a useful tool are the ones that tend to get you know, the really bad persecutions in law, and then these nutters that are like running around with machetes are getting like suspended sentences or whatever. Don't ask me why that is. The world's gone completely mad, but all I know is that I want to stay on the right side of things. I want to stay out of prison, so I always carry currently something that's UK legal, obviously, and with the caveat of, if I'm doing something that really warrants a different type of knife, then you have a legal excuse for carrying that. You might be going on a camping trip, you might be processing timber, whatever it is, but it needs to be a legitimate excuse, not just like, oh, tomorrow I think I might be going camping, so I chucked it in the car. That's never going to be good enough. So, Who knives have had a couple of models out which caused mild controversy in the comments section, because the previous ones were like flipper designs. So they were non-locking, they were a double detent design, very nicely done, titanium handles, really nice blade steel, and people were complaining and saying, oh, they, you know, if it flips out, that's illegal. There's some sort of grey area around that, but what I will say is, as far as my understanding of that wording goes, I don't believe a flipper in itself is illegal if it's flipped out by your thumb, not some sort of sprung action in the knife. And currently there are multiple sellers in the UK that have been selling these things for absolutely years. They're very well known sellers, Who included, and the police are well aware of this fact, and they haven't gone round to any of these places and kind of busted the factory, and they haven't gone round to any of their customers and arrested them. So I believe it probably remains up in the air, because the police wouldn't actually want that to go to court. It's kind of beneficial for the politicians and the police to have these scary sounding things going on, so people just veer away from that type of knife altogether. But the wording does specifically, it was brought in for spring assisted blades, you know, because they were basically kind of a loophole to a flick knife, if you like, and it clearly talks about them being automatic in function, and there's nothing automatic about you pressing something out with your finger. I mean, the same could be done if you had a Swiss Army knife with a really loose blade and you flicked it with your wrist and it came out. That doesn't automatically become illegal. Obviously if it locked out it would, but it's not. So here we have something that hopefully no one will find controversial, because it doesn't actually flick out at all. It is a standard slip joint mechanism. So if I can just show you there, you can see this spring at the back is what's holding the blade. So it has a kind of halfway detent, so it sits nicely at halfway and then fully around, and it just clicks out. So that is not locked in place. As you can see, we can move that if you give it a pretty hard push, but rather cleverly, like all the Who designs, it's got this front choil piece with a little bit of jimping right there, so you can actually put a finger up, choke on that, and now we actually stop the knife from being able to close. So if you were doing some kind of digging with this, digging out some wood or whatever you were doing, it's not going to shut down on your finger. So it's a pretty safe aspect to it. That's the one complaint I hear people making about any knife that's non-locking, is that they're concerned it's going to shut on their fingers. But obviously if your finger is there, it's just not possible. And you've also got a secondary cutaway there, so you could actually hold it further out, then you don't have control of this closing, but that actually seats the secondary finger rather well. Very, very comfortable indeed. We have a little thumb ramp here and some jimping up the back. We have a Bowler M390 blade steel. Bowler M390 is really, really good, holds an edge nice and hard, and is reasonable to sharpen. You know, some super steels, they can hold an edge for a long, long time, but when they go dull, if you're not a knife nerd, you know, you're not really into your sharpening and stuff, they can be a real pain, because if you've just got a very basic kit, you're going to be there forever over a sharpening stone trying to put an edge on that thing. Bowler M390 is kind of a nice balance in between, and it's a sort of swept clip point type design. You can see it just sweeps up a little bit at the end. It's got some nice geometry on the blade there, and it's got a kind of a little bit of a false edge on top, but there's nothing sharp there at all. You can run a finger up and down that. We've obviously got our thumb studs here, nice and large, so I'll just demonstrate. One-handed opening is perfectly feasible, and then just in case anyone feels like this is somehow a flick knife or whatever, if I try, you know, the best I can manage is to there, so it's not really gonna pop out. It just catches in that first sort of detent there, and then you have to give it a pretty firm push. So this is really ideal. Often people need one-handed knives for working. You know, if you're working at heights, if you're working up ladders, doing tree work or something, and you need something to cut ropes, then it's ideal obviously to carry a knife, and you don't really want something that you're having to kind of fiddle around with two hands with. You might be holding on with one hand and you just want to pull this out and open it up with the other. So this is absolutely ideal. It's a really pretty design. You can see it shut there. We've got our pocket clip here, which is really deep carry, and it's also ambi, so you can mount that either side. You can see on the other side you've just got a little recess there, so you can actually take this apart very easily, mount the clip on the other side. It's obviously tip up carry. We've got a lanyard hole there. Scales are titanium, and it has an overall length when closed of 3.91 inches. Nice and light, as you would expect, because it's pretty much titanium everything apart from that blade, the thumb studs and some of the screws, etc. But the rest is TI, and it's beautifully made. You know, it's really, really nice. It's actually just nice to touch. It's so soft. They've beveled all the edges. You know, you really get good value for money with these guys, and these aren't cheap knives. You know, if you're looking for a 20-30 pound knife or whatever, then, you know, go to the hardware store, pick up a pen knife. That's what you're going to get. If you're looking for something that's going to last you a lifetime, is very high quality, is actually a pleasure to own and use, then you're going to be looking more at this price point. So I think these retail at the moment about 179, and for that obviously you're getting high quality materials, and you're actually paying into a UK company, which I think a lot of. I'd rather be doing that than buying from abroad. It's a really, really useful shape. You know, one issue I've had in the past with sort of EDC knives is that sometimes the blades can be quite aggressive, often quite thick. On this type of knife, I don't actually want the blade to be super aggressive and thick, because I'm going to be using it for things like cutting up fruit, for example, you know, cutting up apples and stuff. It makes it impossible if the blade's too thick. This is perfectly workable for that kind of thing. It's not too aggressive looking either. You know, it's quite a pleasant looking thing. So if you go too tactical and you're wanting to carry this round in a normal setting, you might be getting it out in the office and you don't want to kind of frighten people around you half to death and they think you're some sort of Rambo-esque type character, then something like this is rather fitting. It comes super sharp. I mean, I haven't got much hair on my arm, but yeah, I mean, you can see it's just removed a bunch of hair and skin off me. Very pleasant indeed, but that's normally the test I do just to see if they are sharp, and this comes razor sharp. As we've seen, choils either side, so you can choke up on there. You've got your thumb ramp there, so you can get a really good close hold. We've also got this sharpening choil in here, so that just allows us, as we sharpen this blade over years, the blade will slowly reduce in size that way. If you haven't got that choil, it starts to look very odd indeed. And it also just allows you to work on this cutting edge when you're sharpening without kind of scuffing up pieces around here. You often see that on knives where they haven't got any sharpening choil and the blade comes right back. You start to see scuffs on these kind of handle areas. You see scuffs around the base of the blade, you might see scuffs on the thumb stud. So it just helps a little bit with the actual sharpening operation. Let me know what you think in the comments. I absolutely love it. Just started carrying it this week. Been using it for the usual stuff, you know, I'm out and about on ranges, so I tend to use it for cutting lots of pieces of cord, opening up wrapping, cutting through webbing, stuff like that. We're working with a lot of like Kevlar string at the moment, so I've been cutting through that. It makes quick work of that. And then the usual stuff, you know, opening Amazon boxes, cutting through annoying battery packaging and all that kind of thing. It's absolutely excellent for that, and like I say, it's a real pleasure to own and use. I'll chuck a link down below to the Who Knives guys. You can order direct from them, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And just in case you haven't seen the other videos, they do come in these rather nice mini kind of pelly cases. They'll actually allow you to pick your number. I got number 4. Obviously they're quite popular, they kind of run in drops, so a lot of the numbers disappear pretty quickly. And then you also get a nice little carrying sock for it there, so you can just drop it in for that if you want to kind of keep it as a non-used memento, keep it nice and safe. Give you a guarantee, a few stickers. The guarantee basically guarantees everything on there from defect, you know, so if something's defective and you find that and you send it back to the guys at Who, they'll sort you straight out. They're really, really good guys. What they're not going to do, you know, is if you've been like hacking through a can of beans with it, or trying to pry off a, you know, lid off a tin of paint and you kind of ruin the tip of your knife, they might offer somehow to fix it on a paid basis, but they're not going to warranty like misuse. And if it's just wear and tear over years, you know, if you contact them in 20 years time and you say your blade's a bit worn down, they're not going to do much about that either. That's just general wear and tear. But if it's actually got a fault and you can send it back to them, I'm sure they will sort you out. They're really good guys to deal with. And they also give you like a kind of like a lens cloth, but I guess it's for just polishing up your blade, making things look really nice. But it's just nice to have those little added extras in there as well. Thanks for watching, take care, I'll catch you all next time.